Alrighty, folks, it is 10:43 here on the East Coast. Oh, hold on. And yes, it is 10:43 here on the East Coast. Welcome to Twitch Line. I am your host, Hoto, joined as always with my best friend and co-caster. It is Acorn. How you doing, buddy?
Hey bud, how you doing, man?
Uh,
Another beautiful Sunday here, ready for action.
Ready for a focus Sunday focus segment? Is that what you're about to say?
Yeah, yeah, I'm having some issues with the microphone tonight, the headset here, so hopefully we'll work those out, and hopefully for the end of the week here we'll have my better mic and camera set up so we can do this thing more legitimate.
Yeah, that'd be really, really nice to see. So that would be really cool. That would involve me to also, we would do this via a Twitch call instead, and we'd be getting video and be wonderful. But it is a Sunday night here on Twitch Line, so therefore we're going to be doing our Sunday Focus segment. So for those who don't know what this is, it is a deep dive into a particular topic. Normally we go through multiple topics within a show when I do our normal Wednesday show, but instead we're going to be doing a deep dive. So we'll be going in, focusing in on one topic. The show will last about 45 minutes to an hour, and hopefully you find it interesting. So it's a different little format that we do here on Twitch Lines on Sundays. But just to get it out of the way, let's just tell you about our socials. So you can email us any comments, concerns, articles, anything you want us to talk about on TwitchLineLove at gmail.com, or you can also tweet us. It's an easy way to contact us. If you have anything quickable and linkable, you can send that over to Twitchline at Twitchline on Twitter. You can also follow us on YouTube if you are watching this on YouTube. Hello. We stream to Twitch and YouTube at the same time, and you can look us up at on YouTube under Twitchline Love and Advice, and we're available there on YouTube. You can follow our channel, so if you want to follow along on that, that would be wonderful. It's also a place where we store all of our archives and older shows, so if you want to check out older Sunday Focus segments or any other past shows, it's all available on YouTube. And if you want to take us on the go, we're available on SoundCloud, where we cut the show up into little segments and make them easier to listen to on the go. You can listen to them on your iPhone, telephone, G phone, anything you want, laptop, portable tablet, anything that's with you on the go. You can listen to us via SoundCloud. Just look up Twitch Line on SoundCloud, and we will be there. So, welcome to our Sunday Focus segment. And today's Sunday Focus topic is combating loneliness. So, what happens to somebody when they haven't been in a relationship in a long time, or they have been in a relationship but are in a little bit of a slump? The past relationship didn't go their way, and they feel like all of a sudden they're just having a tough time. Loneliness has a tendency to set in, and there are ways to fight it. And it's one of those things in which, if you do not take steps to combat it, it could sort of overwhelm you, and could end up being very problematic in the long run.
Yep, indeed. We um we all face it at some point in our lives, and we have different ways of dealing with it on our own. But as it relates to dating and relationships, there are some definite things we can look at in ourselves, and then ways that we can overcome it. So we're going to talk about all this stuff today, and just as sort of a preface or whatever, a lot of people attribute loneliness to the fact that they are single, and they
Mm-hmm.
feel like if they could just get a boyfriend or girlfriend, they'd magically escape those icky, single, and lonely feelings. But for a lot of people, hooking up, having a friends with benefits, going through like spree dating, and even a normal relationship can end up being a way to distract themselves from that feeling of loneliness. But the moment they don't have someone drawing their attention away from it, it comes crashing back down on them, and they sort of get buried under it. So, uh, what we're talking about loneliness tonight, we're talking about loneliness in a relationship, outside of a relationship. It can affect you at any point, and loneliness is not just for single people, right? There are people that are in relationships, sometimes failing relationships, where one or both members of that relationship feels alone and disconnected from the other. And so they can be surrounded by family. They can be constantly in contact with another person, their partner, and still feel absolutely alone. So we need to start to consider the frame of mind that comes along with loneliness and the results of the decisions which we make both consciously and subconsciously that uh, can create loneliness and maintain loneliness. So, as I'm sure you might agree, Zolfan,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we can't just decide to not be lonely anymore. It's not as simple as that. It's not like I said, it's a frame of mind, right? But it's not like you can just be like, oh, you know what, today I decided I don't want to be lonely anymore, so I'm just not going to do that. If it were that easy, then there'd be no reason to have therapists. But I think that if we can figure out the decisions that we make that lend to our loneliness, and if we're stuck in a cycle of thinking that propagates those feelings of loneliness, then we can begin to combat it and take away from the underpinnings. So, anything you want to put out there before we jump in on this, like what leads to loneliness?
You know what? There's a whole lot of things, and the thing about it is it's not necessarily even because you're not in a relationship or anything like that. Loneliness is a very, very interesting subject because it applies to anybody of all ages. Um, I mean, a lot of it can be based on the fact that you are in a situation where you cannot interact with people, and then there are things that actually basically lead onto an onset of loneliness, such as a failing relationship or a failed relationship, disconnection from friends, all sorts of other different things. So it's an interesting topic because it's not just associated with love or anything like that. It's a general problem, and it's even a problem as you get older. And I know a lot of people who are in their upper ages, in the 60 plus range, where loneliness is a very, very big problem and can lead to all sorts of, health issues and anything like that. And it's actually, as humans, we're designed more to be social animals, I guess. So therefore, it is a thing in which I think is a problem that spans all the age ranges of humanity. My contribution to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whether you're a teenager or 85-year-old, loneliness can come upon you, and actually, it's something that is for some people, it is their own doing in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They make decisions that lead into their loneliness. So I thought it'd be useful to talk about what kind of decisions people make that actually kind of fortifies that sense of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one, I see you got it up here on the screen. Good.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So the first one is that we decide that someone else is responsible for our entertainment and our happiness. Uh, a lot of people in codependent relationships will do this. There'll be one or both member of the relationship that relies on the other person to maintain their base level happiness, and not just that, but also their entertainment. They'll say they won't come out and say you need to do this for me because I can't do it myself, but they'll get angry at you if you don't fulfill that role for them, and they'll try to manipulate elements of the relationship so that they are fed, that they are given that attention, they're given that um, that whatever it is that sustains their sense of enjoyment. And so it can be really draining on the other partner. And when it dries up, which inevitably does, is not, no one can be responsible for your happiness full time or your
Mm-hmm.
entertainment full time. Then what's left behind is that feeling of being lonely, empty, and sad about it. So that's a big one. Uh, Also, another thing that we decide that leads to our loneliness is we decide that more is better. So having more acquaintances or more friends, I'll put that in quotation marks, more friends, but very superficial. kind of friendships where you can go and walk into a party and everyone recognizes you and you recognize everyone, so you're liked on that level. But do you really know anything deeply about anyone there? Do you really have any kind of connection to someone there? If something bad went down in your life, would any of those people show up for you? So it's a sense of like people trying to surround themselves with people so they feel less lonely, but not having any real deep connection to those people.
Yep.
And that can lead to a sense of loneliness. Uh, People, and not so it's not just more acquaintance, more social encounters, right? So someone who's very lonely might say, okay, well, to fix this, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to every party I'm invited to, and I'm going to go to every social gathering I can. And they get there and they still feel lonely. They're busy, but lonely.
Mm-hmm.
So those social encounters don't get rid of the loneliness inside them, even though they are, within close contact to a number of people over a number of days. It doesn't do anything because there's no real contact there. There's no real genuine connection there. And then more is better, more dates, right? Uh, so instead of going out once a month with someone that they genuinely connect to and that they feel that they have, kind of a deeper level of communication with, they have a date every other night of the week. And they think, oh, if I'm out there and I'm connecting to people through dating, that means I won't be lonely anymore. I had dinner with this girl on this night, and then 2 nights later, I met another girl for coffee, and then I'm out there, I'm talking to people, I'm connecting, but not again. It's very superficial. So that sense of loneliness, that underlying sense of loneliness, is maintained. And actually, each time you attempt to connect to someone on a superficial level, when it's over, and that your loneliness is still there, it actually chips away. It actually leaves you feeling more depleted because that person didn't meet that. They didn't do that thing for you. They didn't rescue you from your loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second one, right? The third one, it's another decision that we make. We decide that someone is better than no one. And you see this all the time. People that just despise the concept of being single. They would rather have anything. These are the people that are out there saying, I want a girlfriend or I want a boyfriend. They're not saying, I want a specific person or I want, they're not being detailed. They're just like, rescue me from nothing.
Yeah.
I just have to have a connection. And another thing is some of these people they'll get connected to and stay connected to people that treat them very poorly and neglect their needs, and someone who doesn't even get them. So that dysfunctional connection is still better than nothing. So deciding that something is better than nothing is really, it can lead to a lot of other issues. So people should be careful of that. The fourth one, we decide that everyone else has it better than we do. This is the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just other types of negative thinking that alienate us from our circles and our communities. So if I'm pointing over there and saying, look at all these other people that are successful and look at what a great relationship they have, and I really don't know anything about the depth of the relationship or the connection, then I'm left with a sense that I am not in the in crowd. I'm not with people. And once again, I'm alone because others are getting it right and I'm getting it wrong. And the last one, the fifth one, we decide to isolate ourselves as a way of self-protection. So you cannot hurt me if you can't reach me, if you can't touch me, if you can't know me. If we pull back to protect ourselves, we don't get hurt by the things that we know will hurt us. But in the same way, we're building walls and isolating ourselves, and that will enhance the loneliness.
No, you're absolutely right. There are extreme negatives associated to every point that you've mentioned here, and it can lead into a very dangerous circle of basically, just the more negative it'll get, and the more lonely you end up feeling, and lead possibly into bouts of depression. Pretty much. I mean, every single one of these are just a way of trying to see if you can combat it, but just not doing it in a right way. You're not actually like getting real relationships out of it. The one that is most telling to me is the concept that more is better, because a lot of people do have issues being by themselves. I mean, they want to be with someone, or they feel like that being with another person is just better than just not being by themselves. Uh, that whole concept, sometimes can work, but sometimes, and most of the time, isn't very useful because you're not getting much in-depth connections with people. A superficial friend is always going to be a superficial friend. You're just going to be talking about the weather and not really doing anything deep, essentially, like, not connecting on an emotional level or anything like that. More dates that you go on, it just very dangerous in the sense that it's one person and another, and you're just using these temporary stopgap measures to just to sort of pass the time pretty much and not really do very much. And it's very interesting. So the thing about it is at least in some of these things you are actually trying to get out there and do something, Tim. But like, is it one of those things in which it's, even if you're trying to go out there and you're trying to quote meet people or do social encounters or do anything, but you're not really getting out of it? Is that like a personality thing, or is that more just a, like, you're just not really finding out what you're really getting out of it?
So I think a lot of people out there will um, put this on personality,
Hmm.
and they'll say that it's because it's due to personality differences and that kind of thing that's causing problems for me. I don't agree with that, and I will tell you why.
Hmm.
Um, so, being like an extrovert or an introvert, it doesn't actually influence whether you're lonely or not,
Hmm.
right? There are lonely extroverts out there. There are people that, when you see them, they are themselves loudly and proudly. They are connecting to, like, they're talking to people. They're having conversations with a bunch of people. They're not shy in any way. But that may be, again, it may be that superficial kind of connection, and it
Hmm.
may be people who are trying to overcome the sense of loneliness by going overboard and trying to be the life of the party, or put on airs that they're having a great time with everyone around. I mean, you can't see what people are dealing with on an emotional level just based on how they behave at a party or something.
Oh, you're right.
And then you've also got the person didn't come to the party because they didn't want to deal with all that. They're home reading a book on their own, completely content, not lonely at all. Because that's, like I said, introversion and extroversion do not equate to whether you're lonely or not. And some people, they'll try to associate like elements of personality
Hmm.
related to like attachment theories, like psychological attachment theories. So like the secure attachment, anxious, avoidant, fearful, and all of these can influence your sense of connectedness and or loneliness for that matter. But no one attachment type indicates that you'll have issues. So like, just because you are an avoidant attachment type person doesn't mean you cannot have and maintain deep, meaningful connection to other people. You may be avoidant of creating new ones, or you may be more hesitant, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it, or won't do it when it comes to you. Maybe, when maybe you're the avoidant type, but then you're put in a situation where you're forced to be working with someone closely and that kind of thing, and you'll make a connection even if you're not actively chasing it down. And in that case, that personality trait, while normally might keep you away from it, doesn't it doesn't force you into it, right?
Hmm.
So there are just plenty of people out there who kind of try to fall back and say, oh, my attachment style means that I can't be happily connected to other people, or that I'm doomed to being lonely. But it's not actually the case. And uh, for people who, this, just like I mentioned earlier, some of these things, decisions people make, people decide that everyone else has it better than them. So they're looking at introverts, or looking at extroverts and saying, if I were only an extrovert, I wouldn't be lonely. And it's just not that case. You can be an introvert and still communicate your feelings to someone, have them understand, to receive you, to appreciate you, and while maybe you don't want to go with them to a big party or something, you might be fine meeting them from time to time and having a deep, meaningful conversation at that time.
Yeah.
So it's more about quality than quantity. I think that's the overall message here. So Z, have you ever had a peer in your life where you felt lonely?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it is, um, just a little background. I take vacations by myself sometimes. So for me, being by myself is somewhat normal. I've gone to Europe by myself. I've gone to Asia by myself. Traveled countless places by myself. It's enjoying. I like it. I've gone with people. I've gone on European vacations with people, Asian vacations with people, you, for example. Um, but there are times where I have felt lonely. Actually, it has actually been somewhat recent. The last 4 or 5 years has been somewhat of a quote lonely time for me, if I really want to break it down. So I've been around my friends for a very long time, and it was a period, at least very recently, where all of my friends were in just locations where it was just not easy to see them. So I had one of my good friends, her and her husband ended up moving to Naples and living there for 4 or 5 years. You have been living overseas in China and Abu Dhabi for an extended period of time. This is like one of the first times that you've actually stayed here for an extended period of time. A lot of people got married, so they even like going to a different state and visiting them became a problem. So there was like a lot of time where I was sitting at home and I would be basically sort of twiddling my thumbs, not really doing anything. And I was yearning to have a connection with people, but I didn't know what I would be doing. I threw myself into all sorts of different things, playing poker, which financially could be stimulating, but not necessarily connecting with people, and just superficial relationships and stuff like that. I discovered casting. Like I think in a bout of, hey, maybe I should be doing more and trying to get out there and do something that I enjoy. It actually precipitated me into doing what I'm doing now here on Twitch, which is becoming some sort of streamer. So I became game casting, and actually game casting got me out of my funk. Because what ended up happening is I met tons of new people. My co-commentator for Overwatch, for example, Pulse, became a really, really good friend because I would be casting with him on pretty much 2 to 3 times a week in different games, tournaments, stuff like that. And we started becoming really good friends because of that. And then I met all of the people that he went to school with, and then I have a team that I coach. So there was ways for me to break out of it. But it took me a while to actually do it because it was one of those times in which my old standby was to go out, and I would go to your house, or I would go to Shay's house, or I would go visit Devin, or something like that. These are friends that I have here in the area. But it wasn't as easy as it was anymore. And it became a little bit weird because, you know, I didn't have my old sort of standby to go to.
Yeah. So let me see. Do you notice that there's a significant difference between the way that you are connecting with these friends? I mean, the friends that you mentioned there, these are friends that you've had for 20 years,
Yeah, 20
right?
plus years. Yeah, most of
These
them.
are not
Yeah.
like, yeah, these are like these people that know you before you show up and open the door, you know?
Hmm.
So those established friendships are something you can fall back on and not feel as lonely about because you know those are maintained regardless of what you do. You can show up in my front door tomorrow or a year from now, and you know you can rely on the depth of our friendship.
Hmm.
So I think there's something that those things kind of sustained me when I was abroad, and not having close friendships there, knowing that I had a connection somewhere in the world really helped me. But I wonder for you, the the way you're connecting to people through your streaming, through your casting, and that kind of thing, uh, does it sustain you the same way as, or is it sufficient? Like if you went for a long time without seeing your real life friends and you were online, do you think that that would still cover the bases for you as far as keeping you from being lonely.
You know what? I don't know. I think it's a different type of satisfaction because other than connecting to people like I do via game streaming and things like that, there's a little bit of ego about it because of the fact that I do semi professional Overwatch casting. So therefore, there's a little bit of pride when somebody says, "Oh, you did a really good job casting my game and stuff." So it's like, "Oh, okay, that's great." So in a way, the coddling of the ego helps me sort of overcome a little bit of the loneliness. So I don't know if that's the answer that you were looking for, but it's one of those things in which I get great satisfaction doing it. So does it satisfy
Yeah,
the lonely feelings? Maybe, maybe not, but I
I'm
definitely
not.
like it. So,
Yeah, I'm not trying to push you into a lonely corner here.
mhm,
You could say you have no
mhm,
loneliness at all related to this. I
yeah,
just wondered, as far as like, I guess where it's coming from is people across the world now are communicating through uh, the internet, Discord. They're on Twitch. They're doing things like that where they're having conversations. Sometimes it's more one way, like in the case of streamers, like you and I are speaking to each other here, but anyone in the audience would just be listening, so it's a one way for them.
mhm,
Someone on that end of the equation might still feel somewhat lonely because they're not getting that A to B, B to A kind of interaction. They're just on the receptive side. And there are a lot of people out there that are just receiving. All they're doing is receiving. They're going on Instagram and seeing pictures of people doing things. They feel a connection to these people, sometimes an artificial connection. Sometimes they will never know this person in real life, but they feel that they're appearing into their lives and therefore they have some kind of connection to them. But they're not getting anything back directly to them unless they subscribe and hit that like button and pay some sort of money to get their attention, to get actual kind of response, right?
but it's not
So
new. I mean, like
yeah,
radio personalities for years, Howard Stern,
true.
Bubba the Love Sponge. I mean, these guys, Big O and Dukes, like my Don and Mike. These guys have had rabid followings forever from people who would listen to them on the radio, but feel like they know them because they would spend a tremendous amount of time with them, listening to them, and they were almost like considered a friend, even though they've never met in person. That's it's almost
Yeah,
like a little bit of like the cult of celebrity. It's like the movie stars have stalkers because they feel like that that particular person just speaks to me directly, and but it's gotten worse, I think, with this generation because you're right, it is sort of one dimensional, one directional, excuse me, emotions. Streamers are basically going out there and talking to people, and they're talking more at people, I find, than they more are talking to people. There are streamers who are very good at interacting with their audiences and stuff, and that also creates like a bond and a special way that they get together. Is like streamer will ask a viewer will ask a question, they'll answer it, make comments, jokes, stuff like that associated to whatever it is that they say. But more than likely, I find that with hosts and everything like that, it's definitely one directional. I mean, like a lot of the time, some
right,
streamers don't even answer or respond to them unless they get like a sub or a donation, which is really really weird.
right.
Yeah.
And not just that, but even if there is an interaction, it's still
Mm-hmm.
fairly superficial. And I keep using this word superficial, not to mean I'm not trying to use it in a negative way. I'm trying to use it in a descriptive way to define that it is not deep, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if something bad happened, I know that I could call you up and we could talk it through, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for someone listening to a streamer, they don't get to go deep with that person, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, there are people there that feel connected. They're sitting in a chat room with a whole bunch of people talking, but really are they having any meaningful connection to those people? And I think that's kind of what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, when I was over living in China or in Abu Dhabi, I felt very much alone, and it's because I was thousands and thousands of miles away from anyone who had any real understanding of who I am, what I'm about, what my history is, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I did rely on the depth of my connection to people back home, knowing that even though I was gone and away for a while, that any time that I did talk to them again, they would still be there for me, right? In the worst case scenario, they would definitely be there for me. But it became very apparent to me, because of the depth of those relationships, that the people I was interacting with in those places were mostly fast food type interactions. They were, hey, I'm in this foreign country too. I'm alone. I'm away from my people. Let's go have a drink together, or let's like have fun times, but not. It was still very much like single serving kind of friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And you could find someone and connect with them more deeply, but in those situations, a lot of people were coming and going, or they're there for a year or something, so they didn't commit too deeply. So there were a lot of people over there that were part of an expat community, but really, most of them felt very alone.
Is it one of those? Is it one of those things like Northeast China, but more or less Abu Dhabi, that it was always going to be set up for sort of superficial friendships? I mean, like, it's a very transient place, I guess, for the people that go there. It's not necessarily a place that people, okay, I want to settle down and have kids, and I want to raise them in a desert where it gets to be 130 in the shade. Um, it's definitely just, did that come into play, the fact that, even Northeast China being like, a white person in Northeast China, where you were one of few there, and in Abu Dhabi where people are in and out in a year or two, they make their money and they leave. That had to have played really, really more into how, like, you set up a relationship, right, with somebody that you meet there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is just on a friend level. Like, people that were trying to date over there had a horrible time, because no one was really trying to get too deep with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, if you're on Tinder or whatever and you're getting a lot of single serving, wham bam, thank you ma'am type deals, you know what I'm talking about. People over there are just struggling for connection, and at the same time not willing to make themselves vulnerable and do what they have to do to actually connect to a person. They're
No,
just
you're
trying
right.
to alleviate the symptoms of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big problem. So to get back on track here,
Yeah.
there are things you can do to break the habits that make and keep you feeling lonely. And I thought we could go over this. I don't know if you got another magical slide for me here.
I do.
Oh, yeah. Here it is. All right. So, first one, getting comfortable with being alone, right? Alone has very little to do with lonely, right? If you are connected to a bunch of people, you can be alone and still not feel lonely. And same way that you can be completely surrounded by people and feel alone. So getting comfortable with just being on your own, and this is another one of those things, it's not like you can just snap your fingers and just be comfortable being alone, but finding ways to enjoy being on your own, finding ways to be comfortable on your own, can be hugely helpful. And you actually can connect people better if you're comfortable being alone, because then you're not desperate for their attention and you're not coming across as needy and demanding. And that goes back to that thing we talked about. That's the way we opened up the show here,
Mm-hmm.
with people saying, I want you to be my entertainment. I want you to make me happy. So just being comfortable with your own self and not demanding anyone to rid you of the sense of your loneliness is really, really important.
The ultimate test to that is eating at a restaurant by yourself. I know tremendous amounts of people who refuse to do it, out of some sense of being judged, possibly. They say it makes them very, very uncomfortable to eat at a dining establishment by themselves at a table. and all you're doing is consuming food. Uh, it seems so weird to me because I do it all the time, and to me it's not weird, but I am comfortable being alone in a lot of times. As I said before earlier, I travel alone. I take vacations by myself sometimes. So it's like that inner comfort knowing that I can be by myself and not have to worry about it is very reassuring. But there are tons of people who cannot do it, and it is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think people with like a high register of self-noticing
Uh-huh.
probably would have issues with that, and I mean, this is back to the days of our studying psychology in undergrad. But people who are very aware of themselves, and these are the same people that, like, if they have self-esteem issues and they hear someone laugh across the room, they think that person must be laughing about them
Yes.
because they
Hmm.
are. I mean, it's not like a narcissism thing. It's just a sense that, like, I mean, maybe on some level it is, but it's more that they just feel like people are noticing them more than maybe another person would. So
Hmm.
if you are comfortable being alone and you are not a high self-noticer, then you'd be able to enjoy your meal or go to the movies by yourself or do anything on your own and just be good doing it.
Hmm.
The people who have issues with this are the ones that think that there's something wrong with being by yourself and that somehow it means something negative about yourself. And that it's not the case. And if you can get over that, you'd be a lot better off.
The movie thing is the one that really is just to me like so weird. You're in a dark theater where nobody can see you really, except you can see the screen for 2.5 hours. It's like
It's all in your head, man.
I know
It's
it's
all
all it's
internal dialogue.
perception. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like going to a movie alone is great, especially if you don't have
Yeah.
anything to do and you just sort of want to kill time. It's like all right, and you're allowed to be fat by yourself. Nachos and hot dogs consumed without anybody judging you. It's fantastic.
Awesome. um, yeah, I mean, traveling by yourself, all of it. If you are secure, your self-esteem is solid, and you are not worried about other people,
Hmm.
it won't even occur to you. You just do your thing. And so people, there are tips and techniques on how to become more comfortable being alone. Um, I don't know that we'll get too deep into it, but basically just like practice,
Hmm.
go be somewhere on your own and realize everything's still okay. The world is not coming down on you. Not everyone's staring at you and laughing. Like, you're just okay. But let's move on to the second one here. That's the first one, getting comfortable being alone. The second one is get uncomfortable with being lazy and afraid. And by that I mean uh, making connections with people can be very hard, and putting yourself out there can be very hard. But you have to push yourself to beyond your comfort zones to make connections. And if you're too lazy and you just don't feel like going out, you just don't want to make any effort to make a friend or talk to someone, then you're never going, it's always going to be your problem. And if you're afraid of other people, if you're afraid of making yourself vulnerable, or you're afraid of what could happen if you make an attempt to make a friend and get rejected, again, you're exactly where you started. And if you started in a lonely place, you're going to stay in a lonely place.
Hmm.
Also, waiting it out does not necessarily yield results either. So it's not always the case that lonely is just way it is right now, and then if I wait long enough, people will appear in my life. That's not a solution either. This is going to take some active work on your part if you feel lonely. Uh, the next one, this one, I'm going to say it and then I'm going to say it again because there are a lot of elements of this sentence that are important. Seek out and invest in meaningful connections with deserving people. Okay, seek out. It's a lot for one sentence, right?
Hmm.
Seek out and invest in meaningful connections with deserving people. So seek out rather than waiting for something to magically appear. You go out and find it. Invest in, meaning moving beyond superficial interactions and opening up to people. making yourself vulnerable and allowing them to do the same by being kind and empathetic. Meaningful connections. Don't just pass time with people, get to know them. Discover their motivations, their loves, their fears, whatever inspires them, and what they're doing with their lives, and there will be a connection there. People want you to know them. People love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
Give them the opportunity. And it's messed up. It's weird. If you let people talk about themselves, they will like you more. There's something going on there in psychology. When people get to express themselves to you and you are open-eared, they actually will like you for it. The last part of the sentence, with deserving people, this is probably the most important part. Most people will not and should not meet this requirement. Most people out there should not be your best friend and should not be able to meet all of your emotional needs and that kind of thing. Finding someone who's thoughtful, kind, emotionally open, patient, etc., can be very difficult. And though they are out there, it's not going to be easy to find them. But those people who are out there and are like that should appreciate someone who's bringing that same energy. And sometimes it just takes you being open to these things, and someone else allowing you to step into their life, or the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important one. There is another one. Is there a second part to the slide, or?
Oh no, I can add it in. I just saw what you put in there, so I can add that into the slide. So
yeah, so there's two more.
Two more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Stop the internal voice that tells you the following. It cannot be any different than it is right now. Right, the sort of self-defeatist attitude where you're saying, I'm lonely, it's not going to change, I'm always going to be this way, I'm stuck in this life. So just kind of putting a stop to that and allowing for the possibility that maybe it can be different. A second one, that it's somehow your fault or that you deserve to be lonely. Like maybe you've done some things that have caused your relationships to fall apart. You've been rude to people. You've been not so friendly to people. And maybe that's how it's been, but it doesn't mean it has to be how it is going forward. You can still change. You can still be a better person to people. You can still be more open, empathetic, caring, all these things. So it's up to you to change your behavior there. And then the third one, I just put a blank here. So whatever, so that it's better to be lonely than have to deal with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit confusing, but what I mean is like what we see on the dating Reddits, where people are like, oh, dating is too hard, so I'm just going to give up. Or rejection hurts too much, so I'm just going to stop trying. Or all that I see is failure in love, so I'm just not going to subject myself to that. These people are all cutting off themselves from ever having to put effort and take a chance in order to get rid of their loneliness. Right? They have a reason why they shouldn't have to take it on.
Basically excuses, right? It's just an excuse. Yep.
Yeah. And then the last one, which is maybe the most simple of all of it, is just to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Right? If people know that you're struggling with loneliness, a lot of times they want to help you. It's the same as anything. Like you're in school and you are having trouble with classes. If you sit there and just have trouble inside your head, nobody's going to help you at all. They're not going to just know that you're dealing with that. And like if we go on with the analogy for the classroom, if you talk to the kid next to you, they might explain it to you. If you find the smartest kid in the class and say, hey, can you tutor me? You might get tutoring. If you tell the teacher, I'm actually trying, but it's hard for me, the teacher's job, and if they're a good person, they will generally do whatever they can to help you get it. So it's the same with people who are feeling stuck in loneliness. If you're lonely, unless you come off as crazy desperate and you're like, save me from myself and my loneliness. Mm-hmm. Like if you just go up to someone and randomly say that, yeah, you might freak them out. But like if people who care about you already know that you're dealing with some of this, they will probably try to help you out. And it can't hurt to have people trying to help you out. So Z,
Mhm.
how do you think that this topic tonight can help our daters out there?
Well, if anything, it's just one of those things that I think this is a particular topic that I think reaches more than just the daters, but let's talk about the daters specifically. For those who are interested in being in relationships or are in a relationship where they are currently failing, it, there, there's a lot of coping mechanisms here to help them get through it. And it's one of those things that I think you cannot in any way feel ashamed about feeling this way, uh, whether you are in a relationship or you aren't, because loneliness will affect everybody. It's not something that's unique to just you. Everybody feels it. So being able to go out there and deal with it should be a priority, especially if you feel this way. And the coping mechanisms that you came up with, that you had, which are legitimate, and the basically the circles of don'ts of how you could sort of basically circle it upon yourselves and then even delve yourself into a deeper hole of loneliness. Something you definitely have to be careful about. But it's one of those things in which overall it'll help you as a person, especially like the tips about being alone. Comfort in being alone is absolutely helpful when in between relationships or even in a relationship that is failing, because um, mentally it'll put you in a better place to help you go forward. Whether or not to make that decision to completely end it, if you're in one of those types of relationships, or if you are not in a relationship, for you to go out there and push yourself to see, can I put myself in a better mental state to go forward and be able to better myself so that I can then possibly find myself somebody to share with. So,
Do you think? Do you
yeah.
think that people are out there making poor decisions because of loneliness, because they are themselves are lonely?
Yes, absolutely. That is
Like
undoubtedly
what kind of decisions do you think people make because they're lonely?
lots of decisions. Specifically, relationship decisions. Finding somebody that is in no way somebody they can communicate with. Perfect example. Superficially, could be good looking, but emotionally just not in any way connectable. Relationships where there are perfect example of this is a relationship where there's a huge age gap, and I'm not saying like 10 years or anything like that. I'm saying like 20 plus years. Somebody's like 40 dating a 20-year-old. This is no.
That's based on loneliness.
It could be. A 40-year-old definitely is going to be more established, will have more money. 20-year-old looking for something maybe a little bit more financially stable. Could be coping mechanisms on both sides. They satisfy each other's needs, but will they be emotionally together? Don't know. Possibility, but could be a decision that was based on loneliness and need. Another example is, visiting, or I don't want to say this in a nice way. I can't say this in a nice way, but you know, uh, houses of ill will. The lonely men going out there and finding women who are only in it for the cash. It's the nicest way of saying it. Um, it
So
you know,
we know what we're talking about.
yeah, yeah,
But so, for example, like people cheating on each other. I think a lot of people will cheat because they feel like they're not getting what they need out of the relationship. And I think for some people, I might even say a lot of them, that loneliness contributes to that. that they
Well,
don't feel connected to their partner anymore. They don't feel desire or whatever else, but that another person giving them that attention alleviates that loneliness in some way.
isn't that like the number one reason why women cheat? Like,
Oh, sure.
women need that emotional connection, whereas men look for the sexual gratification most of the time. I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you get. I mean, if we're doing generalizations, then you
yeah,
could probably say that.
yeah. I mean, like that is the weird part. Like, men are driven by their testosterone and the need to, stick it in somewhere. But I find that like a lot of the women that end up cheating on their partners are right. They do not feel that emotional connection and are lonely in their own relationship, even though they might love that person that they're with. Um, so I think it contributes to it absolutely. Uh, but is it one of those things that is is the main driver of cheating? I don't know.
I think you could probably find that pretty
Hmm.
easily, and I think also people get so they have a sense of what someone is supposed to provide them, right? So they say, "You are my significant other. You are my husband. You're my wife. You are supposed to be the person that I connect to most deeply. You're supposed to be uh, there for me when I need you to be on an emotional level. And if they don't meet that need, that can thrust you into loneliness,
Mm.
right? Because you've made this deeper connection, and you said you are the one, you're the person I'm going to dedicate myself to, and you're not getting that thing back. I think that that could definitely lead to feelings of loneliness.
The thing about it is it's blamed. I have friends in the military, and they have to get shipped off overseas. Especially in the last 20 years, you have a lot of enlisted men getting married at an early age, 18, 19, 20, before getting shipped off to like Afghanistan or Iraq. They come back and they find that their wife that they had married before leaving had cheated on them, and is claiming loneliness and the fact that they were gone for an extended period of time. I think it's scummy because supposedly you're getting married, you know what you're getting in for, but at an early age like that, I don't know if that was loneliness that did that in that particular example. You know what I'm saying?
I would say that it is. And
Yeah.
if you, loneliness is not just what you're, it's not just you sitting by yourself in a dark room. Loneliness can be, I haven't had someone touch me in months. I have not had a hug. I very specifically remember this feeling and having this conversation that when I was in China,
Mm-hmm.
up in Northeast, so the first time I went to China, I was up there for 8 months. In that time period, I don't know that another person like hugged me and or like I don't know that I had like a meaningful physical interaction where I felt like someone knew me and was caring about me. I mean, it's not like I like didn't have my arm over someone's shoulder when you're drinking a beer and
Mm-hmm.
like those kind of things. But those were not genuine. Like no one hugged me the way that I got hugged when I left for China in the airport, and that like the realization of that kind of hit me heavily because I was like, wow, that's uh that's kind of sad for me. And I think that I didn't realize that until just now upon coming home that I was lonely partially because of that. So when you talk about the military wives and their husbands going off and being overseas for a while, I can sense that there would be a lot of loneliness that comes with just not having someone to give you physical attention. That's not to justify cheating on their husbands or something, but to say that it's not there, I think that's oversight.
Yeah. I think it's not just that though. Um, I can understand, them extended period of time, no shore leave, 6 months, you don't see a person for a long, long time. I get it. Um, It's just, there's more to it than that. I honestly believe. It just might be like the worst example. It's the most extreme example for sure, um, with regards to it. So yeah, but you're right. I absolutely do believe, to answer your question, that loneliness leads to very, very poor decisions with regards to relationships for sure. And it's one of those things that, like, that causes the quote bad idea bear, for them to come up with ways to alleviate this loneliness. And usually um, the ideas that some people come up with are not necessarily the best ways to combat it. They end up doing what we mentioned as don't do's. Do not do this. It leads to worse things, as opposed to doing maybe something a little bit more constructive and helping you overcome your decisions. So yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I should, but so right now, with all these school shooters and mass shooters and stuff like that, I have to wonder how many of these people suffer from intense loneliness, and
It,
that this is a kind of cry for attention
well,
in a horrible, horrible way.
it is a terrible way. And the thing about it is what a lot of the times when you read these guys are social outcasts. Um, a lot of them have nobody really to turn to and talk to with regards to the situations. Not that this is justifying any of that
No,
behavior,
certainly
but
not.
so,
Or that
but
it's the only factor. There
uh,
are going to be many factors
oh,
involved.
absolutely. But you see it a lot with bullied kids, right? Kids who are bullied and are put into situations where they end up feeling alone because nobody is helping them while somebody is beating up on them, be it the popular kid or the big kid in their class or whoever it is. And they're put and cornered into a tough situation where they either have to just deal with it and suffer for an extended period of time, or they'll lash out. And they end up taking people with them in their urge to, you know, fight back and stop this from happening. But it starts with them being isolated in some way, and then being, and then not having anybody to connect with, not being able to, um, get, you know, seek out and find a meaningful connection to help them through a situation like this. Even if you're being bullied,
Yeah.
if you have friends that you can depend on, it's not going to be that bad of a situation because your friends will help you um, with your situation. You always have somebody you can depend on. I mean, I remember when I was in, I think it was in ninth grade. This is before I met you. Um, Ninth grade, I had a whole bunch of friends, and there were these kids that did not like me for some reason or another, be it for one reason or for what. But even if I was quote being bullied, it'd be done with after school because I always had a group of friends that I was like, yeah, man, that guy really sucks. It's like I hate dealing with him, and I have to deal with him. 3 periods out of the six that I have to go to. So it's like, but there was always an outlet. So it's not like I didn't end up getting like hassled and by these guys and then like not having anybody to turn to afterwards, uh, which was actually good. And in the end, it just sort of fizzled out. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And you'll see the same thing also with people in in the incel communities and stuff like that, where
Mhm.
they probably would love to have meaningful connections to other people, especially people of the opposite sex, and or whoever they're attracted to, but they are marginalized
Mm.
and sometimes self-marginalized because they have anxiety or can't successfully connect to people, and then it leads them going to try to make connections with people in the kind of desperate ways that we discussed earlier in this episode, where they are doing anything to avoid loneliness, even uh, finding people who share their anger at what it's like to be lonely. That the Reddit forum Forever Alone is full of super lonely people who are commiserating with other super lonely people.
There's other super
And
lonely people,
that,
yeah.
but that, I think, in a way, that makes them feel less lonely because they are in a group of people who feel the same kind of
Hmm.
tragic loneliness.
It's
And while it's
self-commiserating,
nice
right?
for them to have, while
Yeah.
it's nice for them to have someone, it's still not going to alleviate the problem. They're more just bathing in agony together. Jeez.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you see a lot of Facebook relationships basically start the same way. Facebook being one of those things where you find people reconnecting with, like, quote, old friends and all sorts like that, and it serves as an emotional backstop in their current relationship because they they feel like it's a meaningful way of connecting with people, you know. And that social media has a weird power of doing that, whether it is meaningful or not. If you perceive the meaningfulness as a positive thing, it can be very good for, your mentality. Forever Alone is a perfect example of that. I mean, like, people reading and commiserating with a person's, loneliness story, and, the upvotes make them feel better. They know that they realize that their story isn't unique to other people. And in a way, like, Reddit's points help out people when they realize it's like, oh, you make a very good point there. It's like, here, have an upvote. So,
Yeah, but likes and upvotes and all that stuff, it's the same. It's like a micro band-aid. It really doesn't do anything to solve the it creates a sense that someone's with you, but it's anonymous and it is uh, again, I'm gonna use the word superficial, but like it's functionally meaningless. You don't actually have a connection to another person through that.
no, you're absolutely
It's like,
right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it is something temporary that'll make you feel better, that maybe help you go forward a
right,
little
but
bit. Yeah.
so is a shot of adrenaline, like
Hmm.
or something like that. Like you can do something to numb pain or increase your happiness, through drugs or something like that. But it doesn't change the baseline. It doesn't change the underlying issues at all. So that's why I think there's a lot of dysfunction as it relates to Instagram, Facebook, and social media in general, because people, the way we are as humans, the way we connect to other humans, the way we interact and socialize is not fully allowed through social media. There's a lot of missing information that people fill in, and
Hmm.
there's also a lot of one-way streets in there where you don't get that communication back. So people will get frustrated, or they'll start to believe stuff that just isn't true.
Hmm. Well,
And
that's how
yeah,
people get brainwashed into thinking a particular way, right? Like, it reinforces their negative outlook on a particular aspect of their life, and all of a sudden they start to believe that that thing that they believe is actually really true, be it relationships with women or how they feel about other people and stuff like that. Just
yeah,
yeah.
or the way they think other people are living.
Hmm.
If if all you see are these people traveling all the time in perfect body shapes and having a billion boyfriends and girlfriends, hooking up and all that stuff. If you see that and you're like, man, these people, that's how it is. That's how it is for other people. That's how it is for everyone except for me. I'm so alone. I'm so incredibly lonely. That's the cycle.
Absolutely.
Zeta says, too much noise in life. Seeing everyone doing something can make you reflect negatively on yourself. Take a deep breath sometimes. True, man.
Hmm.
Totally true. Being able to take a step back and shut it off, or even disconnect from social media, however hard that can be for some people, can get you realigned and reoriented to what actual life is like.
No, you're absolutely right. And, the for the people who are addicted to social media, you can't, and especially if it affects their mood. Um, you don't know if anybody's talking bad about you on social media if you're not on social media. Just just a thing, you know. It's like people who are. It's almost like what celebrities had to deal with tabloids. It's like you don't know the tabloids are talking about you if you don't read the tabloids, or you know, you have friends that that don't that read them but don't tell you about them. It's like you know sometimes ignorance is bliss in that particular way, and that way disconnecting from social media or not reading junk is going to be better for you in the long run. So.
Yeah, I was watching some.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, a psychology podcast or something. They were talking about bullying,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that one of the things bullies do is socially. They take someone and they make them feel alone. So they maintain their power by pushing the kid to the edge and making them feel like they have no one with them. And another way they do this online these days is for example, like if I'm a bully and I'm coming after you, Z,
Mm-hmm.
I I'm going to try to make it seem like I'm not just coming after you, but everyone is after you and isolate you in that way because you'll lose all your power. So I'll make 10 accounts, and from all 10 accounts, I will put up, I'll basically flame you and that way you think 10 people hate your guts and not just me. So they were talking about kids committing suicide because of the sense, that they're being bullied by so many people. And even after they had committed suicide, that they're posting hateful stuff on their pages and stuff, even after they're already gone, and that it's it's a lot to do with loneliness. It's a lot to do to a sense of like having no alternatives because you've just been marginalized too far.
Well, and that's it, right? Like, Twitter's a perfect example of that. Yeah, you're getting bullied via that, and that comment has 50, 60 likes when in fact it's a terrible comment and is making fun of either how you dress or whatever it is, like a bad photo or something like that that you find horrible. All those things. It's all, and it ends up being perceived terribleness that like not just one but 50 people, I mean, liked the comment that was meant to demean you. It's horrifying. It's like you don't want that to happen, it's why social media is one of the bigger influencers of bullying, because it's so easy as a bully to hit people where it hurts and to have it like have an amplification style effect on people. If that bully happens to be very popular or one of those things that he has a lot of followers, and it could be a comment that seems innocuous but that particular person knows that it's hitting you right where it hurts. So that's one of the reasons that I think, like, if you're putting too much stock um in social media like that, then disconnecting once in a while and actually talking to people and realizing what you should be doing, um, and where you should be focusing your attention and how you should be dealing with things is super important. Yep.
Yeah, real
Yep.
real human connection is the big bottom line here.
Yep.
Having actual face to face, tangible, deep, and meaningful communication with someone who is there with you, not just in person, but in the way that they are offering something to you and sharing. And I keep saying being vulnerable. That's a really important part of this. Is like allowing someone to really know you. Well, usually it'll be a two-way street, and then with that comes a sense of connectedness, which can carry on, um, and then you won't feel as lonely.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a heavier topic tonight, but I think it's pretty important because I think you know not everyone's going to be dealing with a breakup or online dating or this like, but everyone in this world deals with loneliness at some point. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to keep it all in perspective and see how it applies not just to the sad stories you hear about someone else, but like look in the mirror a little bit, see how it applies to you, and see if you're making some decisions in your life that are based on you being lonely, and if you're making positive decisions or negative decisions from that, and just being aware of it, you can start bettering your situation.
No, you're absolutely right. So it's one of those things. It's like everybody suffers from it, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And being able to deal with it is a very positive thing. I think that everybody should understand. So I think we're just going to end it there. It's a very heavy topic today, and we started to go into bullying a little bit, and I think that can lead into a whole different situation and could be saved for another Sunday Focus time. So, because there are examples of bullying even in relationships, and that can be that can be a long rabbit hole that we can actually go down. But we're gonna end it there. Yeah.
We should talk about power dynamics sometime.
Yeah.
In relationships.
Yeah, and that would be very much a very interesting conversation. So look for that on a future Sunday focus segment here on Twitchline. But that's going to do it for us. Reminder, join us every Wednesday around 10 o'clock where we'll be live here on Twitch. On Wednesdays, we talk about the internet's problems on Reddit. We take a deep dive into people's posts and give them a more meaningful answer than just break up with her. She cheated on you. You should leave her. We go into the heart of the problem and hopefully give a good answer that that poster actually will understand and hopefully find as helpful. But as always, if you have any comments, concerns, articles that you want us to talk about, email us at twitchlinelove@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at Twitchline on Twitter. You can watch this episode again or any previous episodes of Twitchline on Reddit. Just search, on YouTube, where we're streaming live right now. Just search Twitchline Relationship Help and Advice in the YouTube bar, and you'll find our channel. And if you want to take us to go onto SoundCloud on your phone, your tablet, mobile device, laptop, anything that you can take with you. Search Twitchline Relationship Advice, and you will find us on SoundCloud. But that's going to do it for us here. Join us again on Wednesday. We will be talking about Reddit's problems. And then Freeform Thursday comes back this week, where it's Tim and I just talking about random stuff. Maybe we'll pull out the maps again and show you where we were and where we want to go going forward. We don't know where those conversations lead to, but they're always a fun time. But that's going to do it for us. For Tim, I'm Z. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you join us next time.
Have a good night, everyone.